Assalamualaikum. Hello. So, Chat GPT is a problem. I actually wrote this article or blog post back in 2023. It's almost hard to believe it's been around for that long. I mean, that's not a long time ago. It's like 2 years ago, but it still feels fairly new, even though we've also really integrated it into our lives. And then on my Substack in 2025, beginning of this year, then I wrote an afterthought and talked a bit more about sort of my updated thoughts on it, which I think is valuable, like in just running a blog and having, I think my blog is 10 years old, not sure. Obviously, your opinions change. And so sometimes it's like, oh, let me go back and think about this again. So, what was the main thing I want to talk about in terms of? Actually, I'll touch on different points, and then if you guys want to read the two articles, then please do. You can really just read this one on Substack because this one includes the original as well. But we'll go here first. And so, one of the things I think is important to talk about when it comes to ChatGPT and our dependence on it, and especially how appropriate is it to utilize for religious knowledge, is that we've already been doing that for a while, right? So I say here in the post, Googling upends the entire trusted system. This is not to say Googling an Islamic inquiry. Sorry, I have to go up a bit. Um, Here we go. As Muslims, we've needed to talk about the internet for a long time. It's a conversation that is grossly overdue. We joke about Sheikh Google, but seldom interrogate our relationship and dependence on the search engine. So clearly, we recognize our dependence on it. We recognize the way in which we're utilizing it. But how many lectures have you been to of scholars or others who are discussing the Muslims' relationship with the technology and how it should be, how it ought to be, how we ought to use it? It's not to say that we need everything dictated to us. I mean, arguably, right? I think guidance in every area of our life is valuable, and you take it or leave it, right? But I think the lack of guidance in something that has become such a huge phenomenon in our life is unfortunate, at least in the public discourse. And if you've seen otherwise, then let me know. But that's definitely what I have seen in my experience. So, Chat GPT, because they quote unquote humanize or they make it in a way that allows it to present in this human like fashion through especially the voice feature, but even the way it communicates with you to some degree. It is very, what's the word? It makes it feel more concerning. Um, I think I'm not gonna say they're wrong, but based on the scholarship that I listened to, I think it's a mistake to believe that ChatGPT is some sort of otherworldly phenomenon. That's also based on the makers themselves. Now, the makers of the technology, as I mentioned here, some of them do want us to believe that AI is some sort of quote unquote God, or that they are creating some sort of quote unquote God, that will be all knowing and all seeing and et cetera, et cetera. Which, funny enough, when you think about that, even just logically, right? Even if they could create an AI that could know all and see all from now into the future, okay, what about the past? Human beings have been around for, I don't know, thousands of years. I don't think we've been around millions of years. I don't know. But we've been around for a very long time. There's a lot of history. There's a lot of sometimes they discover cities, lands, that have been buried under the dirt, right? So that's a lot we haven't discovered, don't know, and can never know, can never witness, because in reality, any community, any human nation, is not just made up of the people who are the kings and the queens and the battles and all that. It's also made up of the everyday people and their stories. So obviously the AI could never know that. And even more importantly, it can never know the workings of the afterlife, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, this is this should be obvious to us as Muslims. But I think we should be careful about thinking that it is anything other than a human technology. But anyway, to me, one of the main dangers is how we use it, our reliance on it, seeing it as an all-knowing entity. Forget about in more of the generalized meaning of that. Obviously, no one is like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I don't think any Muslim would believe that. But even still, I think we treat it practically as we treated Google for a long time. We practically treat it as if it knows all. One of the most important things, and I don't think I'll try to find it right now, but if I can multitask well enough, then actually, anyway, but one of the greatest things I think to prove this point, one, as I've heard someone say, ChatGPT can never know what's in the hearts of human beings, which I'll get back to in a moment if I recall. But also written written text. Now that with ChatGPT has trained off of a lot of written text. Obviously, not all, but it has trained off of a lot of written text. Google actually they attempted to get all, they had a project to get all books online, right? I forget what the name of it was. But if you remember from years and years ago, you would Google and you would try to find a book on Google and read it for free or read portions of it. But of course, that didn't last. That project was not successful because that's illegal. Like, it's just these books have copyright, which obviously with ChatGPT and the AI like it, they did it more secretly. They did it before people could catch on. There are a ton of lawsuits against them because they've trained off of copywritten um, material. But anyway, I'm making that point to say because the technology can't even train off of all written material, right? Then that's a whole aspect of knowledge that it can never utilize. As I said, it has trained off of some because they didn't care about copyright issues, but it hasn't trained off of all of it. And so I remember there was a subject I was writing about, and it was so hard to find certain information on the internet. And I actually went to a library, and I hadn't been. At this point, I go to the library more often. There's a smaller one near me. But at this point, I had not been to the library in a while. And so we actually went to the library. I was looking, in the appropriate section, and I found work on the subject that I was looking for. Um, and that sounds impossible. You're thinking, like, really? But we should remember Google, when you look for Google results, how many pages are you clicking on? The first one. You don't even click on all the pages, right? When you ask ChatGPT, you just get one response. Actually, of late, than ChatGPT, or I guess sometimes you ask it something and it'll give you two different responses, and you choose which one you like better, which feels very funny. Um, but what was I saying? Yeah, so you're either with Google, you're getting one page of answers, and actually, of late, Google has been giving AI summaries, or with ChatGPT, you get one response, or sometimes you get two responses to choose from, but you're missing out on on a lot of knowledge. And it's not to say, oh, you should go to Google page 2, 3, 4, because usually the further you go down, the less relevant the responses are. But it's to say that we have to realize that there's still other forms of knowledge to tap into that may be more useful. The other thing about I mentioned, ChatGPT can't know what's in the human heart. The funny thing about this technology is that unlike Google, people, because it's human, because it's private also, um, it's not actually private, right? Because these corporations, or if for whatever reason the government needs to get into your stuff or whatever, it can be broken into. But it feels experientially, it feels more private than Google. And you have a ongoing relationship with it if you use it signed in. Then it actually will know what's in the human heart more than Google, right? Because it has your whole history. You're going to ask it personal inquiries in a way that you wouldn't ask Google. So it's there's clearly, for whatever reason, the powers that be, whatever the reason. And I think some of these people are driven in ways that they don't even know why they're doing what they're doing. Allah on them. They have a desperate desire to know as much as humanly possible. They want to know the ins and outs of the human being. And obviously, one answer we can say is, well, they want to sell us stuff. And of course, I think that's true. And maybe sometimes I think that the wealthy are just different from us, because I think they're motivated sometimes by money in ways that like us regular people can't understand. Um, But okay, let me share this other tab. But I think it's more than that. And like I said, I think sometimes they don't actually know why they're so desirous of just knowing as much as possible, why they're have all the smart technology to listen in on us, to watch it on us. I mean, as regular human beings, a lot of the times people will respond with saying, look, I don't have anything to hide. Like I have nothing that is interesting enough to say. I'm not plotting or planning anything, so I don't care if they invade my privacy. But that's how we think as normal people. Like, why would you want to listen to my conversation, right? But they're operating differently than us in a way that we can't fully understand. So anyway, that obviously privacy is another concern because the way that we relate to ChatGPT, you're going to tell it things that you would never Google. So that's something to be cautious of because this is still a tool created by a corporation, right? For whatever their reasons are. And their reasons for designing it are not the same as our reasons for using it. And so we have to be careful about that. Um, yeah, so in the Substack, I just gave some afterthought. Back when I wrote this in 2023, I just didn't really use ChatGPT, didn't think about it again, moved on with my life. But later on, I guess I don't, maybe around 2025, maybe 2024, I don't know. But at some point, I realized that, not realized, but I just started to find more benefit in it. I go back and forth. There's also the issue of the environment, and where I live, there actually is one of these data centers, and God only knows how that's going to affect our health. May Allah have mercy on us. So I think it can be useful. I think we can obviously get over dependent on it. I think obviously we're probably better off without it. Um, and I guess maybe the last thing I'll say, there's a conversation about they increasingly want essentially poor people to be dependent on this AI technology while the wealthy continue to be more dependent and more interested in um more classical ways of knowing, like through books, for example. And while I think that's possible, I think we also have to recognize that that divide was already existent. We have to recognize that these sort of technologies, they fill a void. So why were we using and people continue to use so, Google Shake and Shake Google in the way that they do, quote unquote, um, because they don't have a scholar. They don't have an accessible scholar, right? They don't have someone of knowledge in their family. So they have to Google it. And at least the preferable thing about Google is that Google, say without the AI result, Google is giving you a connection, I guess. It's not hosting, but connection, that's the best word I can think of right now, to other websites that are useful to seekers guidance, to Islam QA and Shafi Fiqh QA, to other websites that are useful, that are created by people of knowledge and host different answers by people of knowledge, past and present. That is useful. Right, so we have to recognize that, for example, I saw someone say they were using a Muslim woman saying that she was using ChatGPT as a therapist. Someone can say, "Oh, but you should get a real therapist." People can't afford therapy, right? Therapy is too expensive. Many people don't have insurance. And so ChatGPT is unfortunately filling a void that if it wasn't there, it just wouldn't be filled, or would be filled by no, I think it just like for something like that, what else would someone use as a what other tool could someone use as potential therapy before ChatGPT? I'm not saying you should use it as therapy. I'm just giving that as an example. I'm gonna say, oh, but you should talk to your friends and family. Someone using ChatGPT for therapy probably wouldn't talk to their friends and family about that problem, right? So that's and I've spoken. I don't want this to be too long, but I've spoken about in some of my posts on technology that usually something is already broken, and then technology fills that void. And then in using technology to fill the void, we can become overly dependent. But I think we should recognize that the thing was already broken. So I wanted to share a couple of thoughts on ChatGPT um, from very particular angles that I happen to be interested in. So if you want to read the post, I'll just link it in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you another one. Take care.